The U.S. Justice Department is looking to reclassify cannabis from a Schedule 1 to a Schedule 3 substance, making it easier to do research on a drug that is legal in some form in almost 40 states. We're joined now by Benta Boutier, who has been following this story. Hey, Benta.
Hey, Clayton. Indiana remains one of the few states where marijuana is illegal and where people can still be incarcerated for possession. I spoke with researchers at the state and advocates about changes in classification, and they had varying opinions on what it will mean for the state. The reclassification does not legalize cannabis. It takes cannabis off the DEA Schedule 1 list, which includes substances it says have the highest potential for abuse and psychological dependence. And it moves it to Schedule 3, which the DEA says are substances with moderate to low potential for physical and psychological dependence. The change is exactly what Jeff Staker has been asking for since 2016 when he started Hoosier Veterans for Medical Cannabis. He's worked with groups like the American Legion and AMVETS on resolutions that ask the DEA to recognize the potential for medical cannabis use.
I did that after I was just getting off of opiates from nearly 10 years of being prescribed that through the VA. And I was running the risk of, I was having to take more later on, what a little did at the beginning.
The opiates were for chronic back pain. Since 2012, the Veterans Association started to get patients off opiates because of a rise in accidental overdoses. Staker says canceling people's prescriptions sometimes pushed them to seek out street drugs or experience dangerous withdrawal symptoms. He says access to medical cannabis could have mediated these negative effects. He has a medical cannabis card and says he's shown it to his local prosecutor.
It gives me a better quality of life. In doing so, obviously, I take it for chronic back pain, and now I'm starting to feel the effects of getting older.
In 2022, President Biden asked the Department of Health and Human Services for a scientific review of cannabis scheduling, and it determined the substance has medical value. The DEA's notice this month says the reclassification moves to make its scheduling consistent with that stance. But for drug legalization advocates, the change doesn't reverse harms done since the Controlled Substances Act passed in 1970. The National Coalition for Drug Legalization held a community panel at the Buskirk-Chumley Theater in Bloomington this month, where an attendee asked about the reclassification. Nicholas Voiles, who was part of the panel, told attendees reclassification in medical cannabis will benefit people who could qualify for a card or who have ready access to health care. And that's if and when Indiana decides to change its rules.
This is doing nothing to discuss, to talk about, the people that have been locked up from this horrible scheduling of a drug that was only scheduled to hurt a certain race class.
He doesn't anticipate the rescheduling will change a lot for people he works with, and wants full legalization. 3 of Indiana's 4 neighbors have decriminalized cannabis.
Let's say you get caught 2 or 3 times, then you're habitual. Then you have like a mandatory 5 years on top of your other years. You could conceivably do a lot of time over marijuana where you can drive 1 state over and it's completely legal.
Possession of 30 grams of cannabis, which weighs as much as a small bowl of cereal, is a Class B misdemeanor in Indiana. Anything more than that can result in a felony charge. Voiles says enough research is available to prove its benefits, and it's individualized who benefits from medical use. Researchers say rescheduling will make conducting research like clinical trials easier. Ken Mackey is among a team of IU neuroscientists studying cannabinoids. He says scheduling of substances doesn't make a lot of sense. But the rescheduling will simplify his research. His lab at IU gets a surprise visit from the DEA every couple years. Under Schedule 3, his lab's record-keeping, inspections, storage requirements, and licensure wouldn't be as rigorous.
There's a lot of different cannabinoid drugs that we might want to look at, and each one of those Schedule 1, adding them is a very time-consuming process, and this will make that faster, which will have the net effect of speeding up research on them.
Because cannabis hasn't been decriminalized in Indiana, it makes it hard to do research or interview people about their use.
If you ask them, do you use cannabis, you're potentially having them admit to a crime at the state and federal level.
He says reclassification will make it easier for researchers who have shorter questions they want answered on cannabis, but don't have the resources or time to get a Schedule I license. Indiana Governor Eric Holcomb and other lawmakers have stated they won't move to change rules on cannabis until something is done at the federal level. Staker anticipates the DEA reclassification means Indiana will change its laws. He says Indiana will have a new governor next year, and candidate Mike Braun expressed his support for medical cannabis during a debate this spring.
In the Marines, I was a sniper, so I was trained to observe and take my time with things and look at the battlefield and to assess what's going on and stuff. So I think in 25 we'll see something happen, and with this rescheduling, most definitely will happen. 100%. Indiana will have to do something to facilitate this medicine for our citizens and our veterans.
Now that the Drug Enforcement Agency has issued a notice to reclassify cannabis, a period of public comment is open and goes through this July. Comments can be submitted to the federal e-rulemaking portal.